Aloha and welcome to ThinkTech, where we're raising public awareness about technology, energy, globalism, and diversification. As part of the ThinkTech series, today's show is Global Connections, and I'm your host, Carlos Juarez. We're joined today by Natasha Schultz and Reidy of the Pacific and Asian Affairs Council, and we're going to have a great conversation to learn about some of the exciting work that PAAC, the Pacific and Asian Affairs Council, is doing, helping connect high school students here from Hawaii all over the world in different parts of Asia. We're going to remind our listeners that we're broadcasting live on the internet at 2 and at 4 every weekday, and all of our shows are streamed on Spreaker.com and Ustream.tv. If you'd like to get links to our live streams or any of our previous broadcasts, you can find them on ThinkTechHawaii.com. And if you'd like to join us here in our downtown studio for any of our shows, write to j@ThinkTechHawaii.com. So again, we're joined today by Natasha and Anna. I'd like you to just say a few brief words, and I'm very excited, looking forward to our conversation, learning about some of the exciting work that PAAC does in connecting students here to different countries in Asia. So tell us a little bit about yourselves and what it is you do, and then we'll kind of unravel more about PAAC and the programs. But first, just a brief welcome.
Sure, thank you. Thanks so much for having us. My name is Natasha Schultz, and I'm the High School Program Director at PAAC. And so my capacity at PAAC is to coordinate most of our high school program, which includes clubs and conferences, our World Quest competition, and of course the travel program that we're here to talk about today.
Excellent.
Yeah, and my name is Reidy. I first got introduced to PAAC when I was in high school. I was the COOKE High School Club president for PAAC, and I was involved in all their conferences and competitions, and got really involved and was very fortunate to receive a scholarship to travel to Vietnam in 2007. And since then, graduated from college, and now this is my first professional job.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And again, I think you're going to be able to share some of your own story as a good example of what these opportunities do. And of course, I want to make sure our listeners understand PAAC, as we call it. PAAC is the Pacific and Asian Affairs Council. And this is a very important local organization here in Hawaii, and it's part of a larger network of World Affairs Councils throughout the country. I think there's like 92 of them, and this is essentially the World Affairs Council for the state of Hawaii, and it carries out a broad range of programs. We'll focus today on one aspect of the high school program, which is very exciting, that many students here from Hawaii have opportunities to actually go and travel and have a good study program in different parts of Asia. Natasha, you've given us a quick snapshot of some of the many parts of PAAC, and today we're going to really try to focus more on one important aspect. For many years now, PAAC has had essentially what would we call it, a study program or a travel program that in the summertime connects our students. So tell us a little bit about maybe some of the context of what is the program itself, and as we'll see, the success of that program has helped to see it expand now. We have some new other initiatives.
Yes, definitely.
So tell us just about the general background of the program itself and what it does.
Sure. Our travel program, or our summer study tour program, was launched in 2004 as a result of a generous grant from the Freeman Foundation. So they've really been the backbone of this whole initiative and have really allowed us to offer all of these opportunities to the students in Hawaii. And the purpose of this program is to allow our local students to have a meaningful experience overseas. In a nutshell. And as we've done 10 years of this program already. And we rotate between 4 countries. So we have been able to take students to South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, where Anna was able to go there, and also to, what did I say, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, and China. Thank you.
Excellent. And so gosh, 10 years now, what's exciting is that it's both got a track record, and you've been able to kind of fine tune it along the way. Each of these of course is unique in their own way, but in general it involves a process, and through this generous grant of the Freeman Foundation, it allows actually students who might not possibly have any way of doing it, because they actually effectively provide a scholarship that pays for it. This is quite exciting, and essentially the programs might vary a little in length, but what's a typical one that you could describe?
Yeah, they all, of course, like you said, they vary a little bit based on the country, but the general idea is that we always go to the capital, and then we go to 2 or 3 other places, always including some kind of rural area in the country. And then within those destinations that we go to, we partner with schools, we partner with nonprofit organizations, we've always included a visit to the U.S. Embassy, we visit other kinds of professional organizations. Of course, we sightsee and see all the most important things, and we really like to allow the students to have a person-to-person connection. So whenever possible, we've arranged individual homestays with students that are from the school that we partner with. And we've also done other kinds of group homestays, largely in rural settings, where they will be able to stay with a local family and kind of see that day-to-day life.
It's really just incredible how much they can pack in 2.5 weeks. Like, they're keeping you going, and you feel that, but it's at the end of 2 weeks, you're like, wow, I went all over the country, you know, into cities, like rural areas, temples, you know, government buildings. You're just experiencing so much in such a short amount of time, so like they really make the most of.
And at that level, well, you know, we know this concept of culture shock, but it's almost like you have such a packed schedule, you don't have time to worry about that. You're just going to the next destination, and I mean, it must be just an exciting thing. And as I think we'll look by now, and the experience we've seen, that, you know, the outcomes and maybe the impact it has is just, you know, phenomenal. This is in many ways a real important form of what we might call even a citizen diplomacy, where these students are going and they are cultural ambassadors. They're representing their high school, they're representing the state of Hawaii, they're representing the larger U.S. country they come from, and so that's quite exciting. And I wonder, I mean, maybe just to follow on your experience, I mean, did you see yourself going there in that role as an ambassador of Aloha, as an ambassador of the U.S.?
Certainly. I think that's something that, well, both my parents and PAAC before you go on the trip kind of drill into is like, you know, you're representing more than just yourself for the first time, more than just your school. You know, and what does that mean when people are viewing you, you know, and this is the only American they might see or foreigner they might see, and, you know, to take advantage of that, make a good impression and make these connections. So like when we're meeting with high school students and getting to interact, or even just, you know, our tour guides or community members that we're meeting at these different, you know, organizations that we're going to, it's always like trying to make those connections and learn about each other, and but always definitely it's like you're representing Hawaii, and you know, it was always fun. We get to share hula. I think that's something that the visitors, or you know, the people that we're going to always love, because we get to share like part of our culture too.
Yeah. Oh, that's exciting. And just to maybe to deepen a little more about the process, so there's a initial seed money that was provided from this grant, and it allows us to then reach out and provide scholarships. How do you find the students? How do you reach out? And you know, obviously much of it is through PAAC itself, where you have clubs in many high schools, but there's an effort as well to reach beyond that and find some. So tell us a little bit about the outreach.
Yes, and I think that what you said is true, that most of the students do come through the PAAC network. And because it is a scholarship, we do look to reward a lot of students who have been really invested in our programming. And in addition to that, they've already shown that they're really interested in global issues, that they're dedicated to it, and that they're willing to pursue it on their own free time, on the weekends, through their club activities. So that is really kind of the primary group that we reach out to. But in addition to that, because it is open to all students in the state, we also promote it any way we can through the radio or in the newspaper. We've been really lucky that people have featured us on shows before. And we just try to get it out as many ways as we can. And now that we have Anna on board, you know, she's been really great at reaching out through social media and through our Facebook page. So we're doing as much as
ultimately,
we can.
once you've got this record, I mean, like a lot of things, it's word of mouth. People coming back to share what they've done, inspiring others, and that really can go a long way.
That's exactly how I heard about PAAC. Was you know, someone who was like kind of a mentor to me, an older student, upperclassman, had gone on a PAAC trip, and then she told me about this experience. And this was before Kahuku had an established PAAC club, and we weren't really involved in a lot of PAAC activities. And you know, I was able to get involved in something like, I want more students to know about this and do this. So like, you know, tried to get a PAAC club started at Kahuku High, and then more Kahuku students got to have this opportunity. So that's kind of like, I think, little pockets of people, and then it just spreads, because you know, you can't not share this experience. You just want to tell everyone.
Yeah, no, it's a life-changing one, and we'll certainly come to look at that more carefully. Back to just finish a few thoughts on the process. Okay, so you've got the program, and obviously you've got the details in place. You've got some outreach, and then there's a screening process, of course, because and that they've been carefully, both prepared. Tell us a little bit about the process of either selection, the students have to apply, and then as well, what happens next once they're selected. You've got to make sure that they're properly briefed and prepared.
Right, so the process is that they fill out an application, they submit it. We screen the applicants, and then from that initial pool, we select the students that we want to interview. So we offer an interview to a number of the applicants, and from there we select our group. And from that point on, which this year, it's going to be in January that we'll be making those selections. So from January until the travel occurs in June, I'm actually already working with the students to get them prepared. And actually, I'll let Anna say a few things about that because she went through the process of, you know, there's projects and there's orientation, and maybe we can just get her take on that.
What was that like for you?
Well, you know, I think initially when you're selected, you're really excited, and you want to know who you're traveling with, so you kind of need to like break down those like ice, you know, the ice between everyone, and get to know who you're traveling with, because you know you have to support each other. You're going to be going through a lot of ups and downs as you're going through traveling, and emotionally and just cognitively, so you need to know how to support each other. And then we just have like was it a week where it's just another jam-packed week where you're learning language, some basic phrases so you can get around, so you can shop, so you can thank people and say hello. Culture, you know, important things that you need to know not to do and what to expect, and then a lot on history, and that's really great because when you're going to these sites, then you have the real context of like why do I care that I'm seeing this site. So it's a lot.
It's a very meaningful experience. Not just you're just going on vacation. Of course not. You're preparing, you're studying, researching, so that when you get there, it's come to life and you know something about it. The other aspect, and I'm recalling maybe it's varied over time, but students will also then be asked to, in effect, you know, either prepare something they're going to share, or the other aspect is, you know, they will do, I guess, I don't know if you'd call it as social action or service learning or some component. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so there's a couple other components in addition to that. One is the students do an individual project. So they're allowed to choose basically any topic that interests them, as long as it's related to the country, and they approach it as a research project. So there are certain requirements they fulfill for that, and that's part of the orientation now, where the students will present to their peers what they've learned. They said, hey, I was interested in Vietnamese water puppet theater, so I'm going to spend 15 minutes teaching my peers about it, and then they do some kind of interactive
and this is primarily sharing with the other peers that are going together. Okay.
Yeah, so they do that, and then also they are now asked to fundraise. And so the recipient of the fundraiser varies depending on the country and the year, but we've supported orphanages, we've supported schools for migrant women in rural China, we've supported another school for former street children in Vietnam, and as they raise the money, we'll tell them like, this is what you're raising money for, and this is why it's a great organization, and you can give me your take on this. But students might have various interests in whether or not they want to fundraise, or that they really understand what they're raising money for, and then we go to the place that they raise money for, which I think really creates that a whole nother dimension and a whole new level of depth for what they were able to kind of pass forward, as recipients themselves of a scholarship and of someone else's gift, to then pass it forward to someone who they meet in that country. It really creates a nice cycle.
Gosh, so it's a very meaningful thing that obviously must be very moving. And what was your case? Did you have an opportunity to fundraise for some initiative?
I'm not sure at that point that we were doing fundraising, but I can imagine, and I've heard, read the students' journals and been able to hear their feedback that you go to an organization, say like Koto No One Teach One, where they're working in Vietnam to help give street kids skills so that they can enter the kitchen industry or the tourist industry. And I can imagine, being there, I felt very impacted just by seeing this process, and to be able to give, I think that would have been very great. So I'm glad that they include that now, and I think definitely from reading the students' reflections that they all, it's good for them because it's the first time for many of them they're able to see a little thing that I do here, $10 that I raised in America, how much that translates also to supplies, whether it's school supplies or whatever, in another country, and the impact that they can have right now, not the future leaders of,
so very real.
But today, you can do it now.
Oh, this is very exciting, and we're going to take a short break. I'm Carlos Juarez, and we're in the Global Connection Show, part of the ThinkTech radio series. We're going to be talking with Natasha Schultz and Anna Reidy about the exciting work that PAAC does to help connect high school students here from Hawaii to different parts of Asia. We're going to be back in just a minute. Stay tuned for more in the story.
We want to thank our underwriters, Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Maui Electric on Maui,
and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of PAAC Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company.
The High-Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency, attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle in COOKE, Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the Gas Company, a proponent of the Liquefied Natural Gas Initiative, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future.
Collateral Analytics, a Hawaii-based tech company empowering the real estate industry with greater and faster access to the tools and data they need to make better informed property investment decisions.
I'm Nicole Horry. Thanks so much for joining us on ThinkTech.
I'm Maria Kashem. See you next time.
And we're back, we're live, and we're ThinkTech. This is the Global Connection Show. I'm your host, Carlos Juarez, and we're joined here by Natasha Schultz of the Pacific and Asian Affairs Council and Anna Reidy as well, both from PAAC, and sharing us details with us about these important programs that PAAC has been doing now. Gosh, 10 years, incredible that there's this long track record. It's spurred by the initial generous grant from the Freeman Foundation that has made possible opportunities for many, many high school students here in Hawaii now. And after, a quick overview we just had about the program, how it's organized, how they're selected and what they do, they prepare to go. I'd like to maybe push a little farther, and that is, some of it may seem obvious to us, but it's important to kind of think it through more carefully. What are the actual goals, and what are the what purpose does it serve? Of course, we know we live in this global interconnected world, and that's part of it on the one hand, but if we have to somehow explain to somebody why would you want to go, or what would you gain from this, what are some thoughts about that? Maybe I can start with you, Anna. I mean, what do you see having gone, or what are some of the goals of this type of program?
Well, I can talk to what I got out of it. There's so much. Just by leaving your comfort zone and entering another country and another culture, your brain kind of flips on itself. You start noticing things. You're thinking critically about, what am I seeing? Why are people doing things differently than what I do normally? And so that in itself, you start to question, well, why are they doing that? And then even when you come back home, you start to think, well, why am I doing the things I'm doing? You start to look at the world. You see that things you normally just kind of took for granted, or it's just there. You're like, well, why? Yeah. And more than that, you're learning about a culture and history that you're not necessarily familiar with. You might never have a connection, that deep kind of connection, had you not actually traveled there. One of my best friends, Nick Trissolini, he traveled with me to Vietnam, and he told me that this trip helped take Vietnam from his brain, the 12 inches down to his heart. And so now when we read about things in the news about Vietnam, we actually have that connection. We care. Not that say we wouldn't care before, but there's a much deeper connection there. And as we talked about, all the kinds of things that you're doing on this trip, all the different types of places you're going to, so you get to, and in all those places they're talking about Vietnam in a context. Why is Vietnam important? Or why is the country important? And so you get to see how interdependent we are and connected we are, and how we should care about what's happening in other places. There's a lot. There's so much, whether from career choices, like people are suddenly they're seeing new things, new options, and so they have some clarity on where they want to go in their career. Many people are getting ready to graduate. So high school, so they're starting to think about majors, so it's influencing those choices immediately.
Absolutely. I think you put it so well. It really does kind of force you to question and ask things. And I've often found, as I encourage a lot of our students at the university to study abroad, not only do you learn about that place and all that, but your own values and what matters to you, and maybe why do we do things certain ways, or another is you maybe appreciate more certain things that you didn't realize, or things that you thought were so important, maybe in the grand scheme of things they're not quite as important. What would you share with us about the overall maybe goals, and even what you see, because these are transformational opportunities, and I can't underscore, especially for PAAC, what they've done so successfully is reaching out to a lot of students who might never have that opportunity. I mean, there are plenty of, maybe not plenty, but there are some fortunate enough that may be able to go and travel, but many of these students have been, you know, often given an opportunity that they simply would not have, and it transforms their lives. So maybe share some of that.
Well, I think Anna just put it so beautifully as far as what she got out of the program. And after seeing, you know, at this point, it's like 200 students who've gone through this program, and seeing their transformation from the time that we interview them to the time they get off the plane when they come home and beyond, it's just so rewarding to see the growth and the trajectories that their lives take from that point forward. But I think when I'm setting up a program and I'm thinking, you know, what are the goals, right? The overarching goal is to give them a positive experience overseas, to build like person-to-person bridges and connections between the countries, and to expose them to a variety of things within the country. We aim to give like a snapshot of the contemporary society in a historical context. So, I mean, this is a huge goal. I mean, even as I say this, I'm like, wow, can we achieve this? But we really do our best to move towards that. And as I've watched my students, you know, go through it, what I can say is that everybody takes their own personal journey and takes something different away from the trip, which is so beautiful. And some of the things that you mentioned, I've seen written in students' journals. For example, I can remember a student who just wrote, you know, before this trip, I never thought of travel. It was like a luxury, you know, that I couldn't afford. But now that I've gone on this trip, I think it's a necessity that I need to understand what's going on in the world, that I want to learn about different cultures and different places, and this isn't going to be my last trip. And so to see that, you know, come out in someone's writing or in someone's, you know, shifting their whole view of what their life could be like. Similarly, other students would write things like, wow, if I never got this scholarship, I think I would be stuck in Hawaii forever. Like, I never saw myself as going overseas, let alone studying overseas or living overseas. And this person that I'm thinking of traveled with us to China, and she ended up for a year in Japan in college, and said that would have never even been on her radar, you know, to do that. And then to see and meet some of the professionals that we met who are, you know, the expats living in the country who come and meet our group, plants that seed of, maybe I could even work overseas. So it's really just kind of opens up the door to say, hey, you know, here's something I thought was impossible. I'm doing it. So what else is there out there that I consider impossible that has now become possible for me? And that's like,
and you describe that an important part of that process is for them to take time to put down their thoughts, to write a journal. So what exactly do they keep throughout the time?
Oh, they keep a journal. Do you remember the journals?
And of course throughout I'm sure they're, oh my gosh, I got to write in the journal. But this is so important because you have to capture your thoughts at that moment. And then of course, maybe describe how does the, you know, what are the actual requirements? I mean, I could fine-tune it. And then of course, even post-trip, I mean, they must have some other reflections and things. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the journals have also, you know, Anna was one of our earlier participants, and we've always kept journals. So she journaled on her trip as well. And we've changed the process a little bit, but in the beginning we didn't have prompts, but now we kind of include a prompt for every day and also encourage them to write about whatever they want, but just to kind of focus their thinking on what occurred that day. And then a lot of times we ask them, like, you know, there's a required reading book as well. This is something else that they do. They all read a common book. It might ask them to reflect on a certain chapter in the book that we read. Maybe it's a chapter that describes Hanoi or something, and say, you know, read that chapter again and then look around. What did you see today? Did it match your expectation based on the reading that you did, or did it not? And, you know, be specific, give examples. So those are kind of some of the things that we push them to do.
Especially as you're going through this trip, you're experiencing a lot of emotions and a lot of things that you're going through, and it's really good to take that time to write it down.
Even if you're angry or frustrated or something,
you have to write it, talk about it, because you're dealing with a lot of complexities. And so, for instance, like, you know, say, like, I know a lot of my peers who are ethnically Vietnamese who are traveling, you know, and having to wrestle with what does it mean to be Vietnamese American and connecting with their culture, but maybe still being an outsider, you know, and like wrestling with those kinds of things. And you know, we're dealing with, you're seeing poverty, maybe extreme poverty, and how do you deal with that as someone who's American, born with privilege, you know? And so, like, talking, like wrestling with in your brain about social responsibility, and I said complexities, but at the same time, like, should I go in and impose this great idea that I have for someone else, so you're dealing with all of this wrestling as you go along. So it's, in preparation for today, it was really fun to go through my journal and just see like where my brain was at as a high school student, but also as I'm exposed to all these new things.
Yeah, that's amazing, and that's both important at the moment, but to go back and reflect, and then after the trip, what takes place then? They have some write up, some kind of reflection that they must write.
Well, they write the final reflection while they're still on the trip, and then they turn their journals in. So I've read every journal of every traveler, and it's really a really wonderful way to see a little bit inside their heads. What's going on, and we read the journals on certain increments on the trip, so we might not know what so and so is thinking, but when we read the journal, it might reveal that there's either something great going on or maybe a problem, and that helps us be more responsive to their needs. But also having that journal is a way to talk about the outcomes. The things that I'm sharing today, come from the journals.
And are they, I guess, explain, I mean, these journals, in order to encourage them to be both open about it, I mean, they're fairly private. It's not something that they're necessarily passing around to everybody.
No, they know that the chaperones read the journals. So that's, but they can share their journals with each other if they want. But anytime we would use a quote or a story, we never say whose journal it is, so that much it's protected as far as their personal thoughts. But you had asked the question about what else they do after the trip. They're all required to do a follow-up project. And that is also very broadly defined. They can do pretty much whatever they want, as long as it shares what they did on the trip to an audience. So say, okay, a scrapbook is not a follow-up project unless maybe you display it in the library.
Give a presentation or showcase it.
So we're really trying to get them, like Anna said, they're excited to share their stories, and it gives them like a platform to do that and to encourage other students. And I think it's a natural thing that they want to do, but it really gives them like the motivation to do it when it's required.
Yes, no, that's true, and I think it's one of these things that you really need to kind of close the loop. People come back and there's a sense of, gosh, I've just seen the world, and you want to share that, and you don't want to let that go. In other words, you need to find some outlet for that. Now, the other thought I had, and this is maybe a question we'll continue to unravel, but at the end of the day, what are the kind of skills, and you touched on some of these, but what are the kind of, I don't know, I guess, life skills, competencies that students are gaining from this, and there are so many, and more specifically, how do those same skills then go on, I mean, to be used for other things? And I'm thinking from everything from the beginning, I mean, just that process of getting ready for the trip, you're having to research a little bit, get organized, you're going to have to begin to socialize and get to know your other, peers. Maybe anything you could say a little bit more about what are the kind of things, the actual, I guess, skills that you get from this?
Sure. I mean, you have a formal interview process before you're selected, and so for many students, I think this is their first time where they get dressed up, and they have a room of adults that they're speaking to and talking about why do you deserve to go on this trip or get this scholarship, and so that's definitely skill building. You have to take a risk. You're jumping out of your comfort zone, so for many students, it's about confidence building. I think for me, one real tangible thing that I really helped to shape my future was this idea of learning how to deal with difference. And even just understanding what does having different values mean. You can say oh, everyone has different values, but to really understand where do people's different values come from. I know when I was in high school, I was in speech and debate and We the People, and I was really gung-ho about civil rights and free speech, and I'm coming to Vietnam with this lens of that's really important and everyone should want that.
Speak your mind.
And so I go to meet with students at a high school, and stay overnight there, and you really get to know these students, and I'm ready to hear them say I'm oppressed, and not really understanding what their values are, but those aren't things I'm hearing. Instead, I'm hearing different values of I love my country, I want to do everything I can to better my country, I love my family hierarchy is important. So that for me was just a clash. I'm whoa, that was something I wasn't expecting. And so to deal with that and learn okay, we're different. We have different values, and that my value is still the same. I still value those things, but that doesn't necessarily translate to someone else, and doesn't mean that they're wrong. And so that helped me in the future. In college, just learning how to kind of build those bridges and make connections with difference. And so in college, I applied to be a resident assistant, and I was very fortunate that I was selected. And I think one of the big skills I talked about was dealing with this kind of difference, and how to help others to kind of make those connections and build bridges despite coming from different parts of the country, or international students who are spending time in college. And I don't think I could have necessarily afforded to stay at the college I went to had I not gotten a position like the resident assistant position. So those are just one example of a skill that I gained from traveling with PAAC.
Oh, this is a great story, and again, it underscores how important it is. Not just let's have fun and go to visit X place. You're really getting life skills that are going to help you in so many ways. Well, we'll take another short break here, and we're going to continue our conversation. I'm Carlos Juarez. This is Global Connections, part of the ThinkTech Hawaii series, and we're talking here with Natasha Schultz and Anna Reidy from the Pacific and Asian Affairs Council, learning about some of the exciting work they do with high school students and connecting them to different parts of Asia. We'll be back in just a minute for more on the story.
Hi, I'm Steve Petranek, editor of Hawaii Business Magazine, and I'm going to be part of Newsmorphosis 3, a look at online news in Hawaii. And along with me there will be Patty Epler of Civil Beat and HuffPost Hawaii, Malia Zimmerman of Hawaii Reporter, Jared Kuroiwa of KHON, and moderating us all is Howard Dykes of Hawaii News Now. If you want to know how Hawaii it gets its news now and will be getting it in the future, you need to be at Newsmorphosis 3. That's at 11:30 on October 24th at the Plaza Club. See you then.
And welcome. We're back, we're live, and we're ThinkTech. This is the Global Connection Show, and we're talking today with Natasha Schultz and Anna Reidy of PAAC, the Pacific and Asian Affairs Council. And Natasha, we were just hearing a great testimonial from Anna, who had, of course, the experience of getting to Vietnam and how it went on to give her a set of skills and experiences, confidence, a whole range of things that, again, just underscores how important these opportunities are. Can you add a little bit to that? I mean, what would you say are the kind of things that these students gain?
The skills that they gain and the lessons that they learn from the trip, sometimes they're not immediate. Like years later, it might dawn on a student, like, oh my gosh, I really learned this on that trip that I went on. So, a lot of times when we think about these trips influencing people's choice of majors or careers, we think international business, we think people that want to go into the foreign service, like that's what immediately comes to mind. But recently a story came back to me that it was really great, and it was really kind of unexpected, because this was a student who had traveled in 2006 to Japan. And in 2012, she writes to me. She's a college graduate. She went into biology. She's studying stem cells. And she says, recently I've been thinking so much about PAAC because it's really dawned on me how interconnected we all are. And I'm working with researchers from China and Japan, and someone in another country might make this great breakthrough in the research that I'm working on, and I need to collaborate in the scientific community, which is an international community. So she says, as a result of that trip I went on in high school, I feel more prepared to make those connections, to be able to work with a scientist from a different country. And for that to, come back 6 years later, it was just really cool, because sometimes we think, oh, this person wants to be, wants to go into biology. Do they want to be a traveling nurse? How else will they use this? But it's just the ways that it affects people. It just comes in so many different packages. Yeah, no, and I mean, as I was hearing, particularly Anna, you're describing, the impact it's had on you. I mean, there are just so many things. I mean, on one hand, just organizational skills, confidence skills, interview skills, just the beginning process, but more to the point, so much of what we do in our lives later have to be working with different people with different values, different ideas, different groups, traveling together. You're stuck in this experience, and you're going to have to learn how to deal with adversity, be flexible. Things. You may have a plan, but guess what? It's gonna sometimes have a few kinks in it, and that's how life is in so many ways. The other is just building those connections, and maybe I wonder if you could add a little more. I mean, you described somewhat, the values you might bring, and suddenly you realize that others, they may have different ones, but you can still appreciate that. And we often hear the idea that, well,
the world is a lot of different cultures and peoples, and we see the world differently, and yet on some other fundamental level, sometimes when you break it down, we have a lot of the same things. We appreciate our family, we have pride in our people, our country, and whatever that might be. I mean, what were other impressions that left you? I mean, you're looking at a world that, on one hand, a place like Vietnam, deep level of underdevelopment compared to ours, and yet people have a dignity. They have pride in what they do. They have, happiness on a level that, somebody who wasn't thinking deeply might not see. I don't know if you could reflect a little bit on just this clash of different ideas and values, and are we fundamentally all the same, or do we?
These are some deep questions here.
Yeah.
No, I think as you make connections with people and students that you meet, and your tour guide and other community members, you see a common humanness amongst all of us. We're all stressed about exams and the life or the ups and downs of daily life, but you're seeing. I don't know if this is quite on what you're asking, but you're also seeing things that are really different, and it gives you a lot of appreciation for what kind of life you do have. Like, for instance, when we went to Sapa and we're trekking through these rice fields, and you're seeing people who are doing backbreaking work to harvest rice. And then you maybe for one day you're doing some community service and you're planting trees or something, and then you're tired and you're exhausted and you're just like, oh my gosh, but then in your head you're thinking like, these people do this every day, and I'm here wasting my rice or whatever, and that translates back to you, just this like kind of appreciation, or like, because you don't think about the people who are making your rice or harvesting rice, and they're doing this every day, So I don't know. You're just learning a lot about people and so much all at one time. So that's why I'm not even sure if I answered your question.
No, that's exactly what I'm speaking of. That you're, ultimately you're gaining both empathy. You're getting put in positions where you wouldn't have seen that otherwise. I mean, you wouldn't think twice about your rice. Now you realize the labor that goes into that, and maybe the value changes for you on some level. It's a puzzle, and that is what I'm wondering here also is about you get connected with peers, with other high school students or high school age students that are there, and how does that play out? I mean, there must be initial awkwardness, who goes first, and then maybe the communication barriers. I mean, in your experience, did they know any English, or were they eager to learn about you? How did you break the ice? How did that take place?
It's kind of funny when you walk into a school. You're kind of like a celebrity. Like, they're really excited, they're clapping, and like you're a little overwhelmed because there's so many students around you, and you're doing some cultural exchanges. So they might do a dance or for you, and then we do the hula for them. And so there's that kind of like assembly style. And then you break into groups. Like I went to in a classroom and we did activities, or my particular activity was like, I was in an art class, so I was doing portraits. We were like having to make a portrait of our partner, so you're just doing little activities, but while you're going through those steps, you're seeing what their classrooms are like and what they have and what their, some of their activities are. And as they can speak a lot more English than say obviously that we speak Vietnamese, it is sometimes a little awkward, but you just try. You just have to kind of ask questions. We have photos. Are told to bring some photos of our family or pets, and so you're sharing that and just getting to see that's where I think you really see the commonness in all of us, where they're like, oh, your baby brother's so cute, or and it's great. A lot of people stay in contact with their partners for a long time. Someone who traveled with me, his name is Jesse, and he stayed in contact with his host family and two of his partners that he met at the high school. And one of them is off in Canada now, and the other one became like a NTV kind of TV host in Vietnam, and he knows these people, and he's back in Vietnam now, and he's teaching English, and so he has connections with people that he met there, and it's great. So
gosh, well, this is very exciting, and we'll take another short break and then come back to finish the final segment of our show. And I just want to thank you for sharing the ins and outs of this. This is a very, very exciting and important endeavor. We're going to take a short break here. I'm Carlos Juarez, and this is Global Connections in the ThinkTech Hawaii series. We're talking here with Natasha Schultz and Anna Reidy of the Pacific and Asian Affairs Council, and we'll be back in just a minute, so please stay tuned.
Aloha, I'm Nicole Horry for ThinkTech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone No. 9 has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBET, the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone's mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Nicole Horry. Mahalo.
Aloha, I'm Maria Kashem of ThinkTech Hawaii, and I want to tell you about our ThinkTech on OC16 show. This week on ThinkTech on OC16, we'll take a look at the Honolulu Century Ride organized by the Hawaii Bicycling League on Sunday, September 29th. This was the 32nd Century Ride, and thousands of riders showed up. It was a beautiful day and a beautiful experience for the people involved. There's always a lot to come on ThinkTech. Tune in to ThinkTech on OC16. See our broadcast schedule on thinktechhawaii.com. I'm Maria Kashem, and I'll see you there.
Hi, I'm Attila Saras, and I'm the host of ThinkTech Fridays. Be sure to tune in this Friday at 4 p.m. and every Friday, where we talk about the importance of technology in Hawaii. I'm Attila Saras, host for ThinkTech Fridays. Mahalo.
Hi, this is Jay Fidel of ThinkTech. You know, we have some great shows during the business week. We broadcast 2 or 3 times every afternoon between 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock. I just want to mention also that we have a new show. This is The Arts of Life with Willow Chang. Check it out at 2 to 3 p.m. every Friday. Aloha. This is Jay Fidel.
And we're back, and we're live, and we're ThinkTech. This is Global Connections, and I'm your host, Carlos Juarez. We're going to bring closure to our program now with a continued discussion here with Natasha Schultz and Anna Reidy of the Pacific and Asian Affairs Council, and basically an overview of their travel program for high school students. It was launched, 10 years ago now, and one of the very exciting things is that the program has been so successful. 200 plus students now that have done these trips, and we've had a growing demand that now some exciting new initiatives have begun to get spawned up. So PAAC today is now helping coordinate and put on various other study programs, travel programs, and I want to hear a little bit more about that, Natasha. So the initial one we've described mostly, it's been going on for years, is a summer program. Many of the students will be going full funded on scholarships from the Freeman Foundation. But tell us a little bit more about some of the other initiatives.
Sure. Well, the first one that we decided to expand on was our trip to Vietnam. We have a great partnership there with a teacher at Campbell High School who has started a nonprofit organization that promotes literacy in Hawaiian, Vietnam, which is one of the places that we were already traveling to. So we started working with her within the context of our summer study program. Students would go there, we'd get in the schools, we'd do some activities, and we'd meet some of the local students. And we got talking with Karen that it would be great to build an entire program around what she's doing. So that was our first new program that grew out from the old one, and this is going to be the 3rd year for that program coming up. Students have been going for the past 2 years with Karen Chun to Hawaiian through her local literacy foundation. They spend 2 weeks teaching English, music, dance in the elementary schools, and then they are still able to do a little bit of sightseeing. They go to Hanoi, and they do a little bit more of history and culture, but the focus in these trips is really the service.
And these are still high school students, and yet so more focused rather than just this quick tour of many places. They're actually there doing this.
They're doing the daily life, the routines. They get their favorite place to eat. They get their local college friend that comes to see them every day, and they practice their English conversation skills and things like that. So it's a more it's a deeper experience, but it's not as broad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. And some of the others then?
And then also from some of our partners that we've made in Japan, we're launching a spring break trip to Japan this year. So this would be the first one. If we need at least 8 students that are interested in going. So we're currently collecting applications if anyone's interested. It's on our website. And then also we're looking at possibly launching a trip to the Philippines next fall. So there's a lot of conversations happening and a lot of excitement around the potential to travel.
so expanding those offerings. And as I'm recalling too, there was an initiative this past year with taking a group, or that invited a group of students to China.
Yes, so we also sent a group to an international camp in Beijing, and we didn't, you know, the camp was put on by the Chinese government, and we were able to bring students over.
Yeah, so just to help
and to kind of organize the group and take them there. But we didn't do, you know, with our programs, we're setting up everything, we're making all the connections. So this was like an opportunity for them to travel without having to create a whole new program, and just to give the opportunity to our students.
And so again, building on this successful, you know, travel program for some years, it just underscores again, you have opportunities that if that summer program may not work, here's another option. And I guess the one you described at Japan is a much more shorter term, so it's during the spring break.
It's a shorter trip during spring break, so like you said, a different time of year for students who maybe aren't available in the summer. And it's going to be a mini version. So it's a little bit shorter, just 2 cities, but it'll still have this school partnership, and it'll also have a lot of historic visits and learning of culture.
Yeah, no, well, this is very exciting to hear, and again, planting the seed so that as these students have this initial short experience, they're going to want more. And I guess now we've got 10 years of experience with this main program, and you've got now a pool of alumni and many who obviously in different ways want to either give back or kind of, you know, well, somehow, give back in some way. And so I wonder, Anna, if you might share a little bit, what are some initiatives that alumni have done or can do, and opportunities that we see likely to expand?
Yeah, well, you know, so many of us are so fortunate to travel with scholarships. From the Freeman Foundation, from Frank Boas, from Jeannie Rolls, and after having such a great experience abroad, a lot of alumni, we always, or at least from every alumni I've talked to, they always express such deep gratitude. And so there's this PAAC alumni or scholarship fund. And so, you know, each year we try to give a little bit, but we're starting a new big initiative. Michael Bennett and I are both alumni who received PAAC scholarships and were able to travel abroad because of these scholarships. And so we are launching a new Indiegogo campaign. It's going to launch in a couple weeks, so we're really excited. But we just felt so compelled because we want more students to have this opportunity. And the Freeman Foundation money can't, you know, support as many students as want to travel. So we really are trying to ask the community to help us to raise money for student scholarships. We're hoping that if the Vietnam trip this summer that Natasha was describing with the service learning component, where they're really giving back and they're teaching English to students, or elementary school students, that we're hoping that more students will be able to take part in this trip if we are able to raise scholarships. So that's going to be launched in a couple of weeks, so please keep your ear out for news of that. We're really excited as alumni to be able to offer this, and hopefully we can actually give some great scholarships to several students.
Excellent. No, and it's funny you mentioned Michael. I was on the phone with him just today. He's now up in the Bay Area, of course, but he'll be back in town very soon, and looking forward to that. And I think this is critical because you've got the experience that many of these students have had by now, and they've had a profound impact on their lives and ways to give back, and maybe what I think is most important is those students themselves, the alumni, who I think are the best salespeople, the best people who can kind of really showcase what it did to them. And we know out there too that the community, you know, whether it's in the business community or other philanthropic areas, you know, they want to put money to a good cause, and this is undoubtedly one of the very best. So I'm wondering, and maybe I'll make sure to get it right, but just for those who might be interested in the Pacific and Asian Affairs Council, and you can go to their website to find about the programs themselves that we've described here, but also perhaps connect and find ways if you are interested to help support. Maybe it's a small donation, or you can pool together, especially for those who can do more. I mean, the impact and the difference you can make on people's lives is astonishing. The website is PAACHawaii.org, so that's PAAC, PAAC for the Pacific and Asian Affairs Council, PAAC Hawaii, all together, PAACHawaii.org. And again, a very important organization that not everybody will know about because it operates more, well, in the small foreign affairs community, it is well known here, but in the high schools, those that have clubs. And can you maybe give us a quick summary? I mean, roughly how many different high schools in Hawaii have these PAAC clubs? They're afternoon clubs?
Yeah, and it kind of varies because club is defined differently at different schools, but I would say that we're in about 30 schools, public
excellent.
and private, statewide.
Excellent. And all the neighbor islands as
Yes,
well.
all of the neighboring islands.
And while we've described mostly one of the components of the high school program, which are these study programs, briefly tell us what are some of the other initiatives. You have a conference usually every semester.
Actually, we're gearing up for our fall event, which is a half-day conference and then a half-day global competition called the Academic World Quest Competition. That'll be our fall event, and then in the spring we have a spring conference.
Excellent. And and those are some of the main programs that PAAC does. In a few other ways, it also helps to really both educate and promote understanding of international affairs here in Hawaii. Very important for all of us. We're in a deeply interconnected world, and as our show here, Global Connection, reminds us, not only do we need people to go and see the world, we bring the world here in different ways, and this travel program has just been very exciting to learn about the impact it's had now. 10 years of many high school students going. PAAC itself actually has a longer history than that, if I'm not mistaken, from the mid-50s approxiximately.
1954.
1954.
And prior to that is the Institute for Pacific
That's
Relations.
right. So decades and decades here in Hawaii as an important, nonprofit, an organization that helps to connect Hawaii to the world and bring the world here. I guess I want to, on that, regretfully we're out of time, but it's a conversation I'm sure we'll continue to have, and other opportunities we'll bring some other maybe returning alumni. That would be a great opportunity to hear from them right after their trips perhaps. But at this point we're going to wrap it up, and we're out of time. My name is Carlos Juarez, and I'm your host here of Global Connections in the ThinkTech series. We've been talking to Natasha Schultz and Anna Reidy of the Pacific and Asian Affairs Council, which serves here as the World Affairs Council for the state of Hawaii. And I want to thank some others who've made the show possible. We have Ian Montana tucked away in the studio there as our production manager. We have the communications director, Chrissy Goffigan, and of course Jay Fidel, who brings it all together for all of us here. I want to thank you, our listeners, for listening. ThinkTech will be back next week with the next show in our series, and stay tuned. If you'd like to get our email or other social media program advisories, make sure to click on thinktechhawaii.com. And if you'd like to be a guest, a sponsor, or a ThinkTech underwriter, make sure to contact Jay at thinktechhawaii.com. Thank you so much. And of course, we'll see you here next week for the next episode of Global Connections. Aloha.